The four attachment styles explained why you love the way you do. Most people think attachment styles are just labels you slap onto relationships after they fall apart. But the truth is far more personal and far more powerful. Attachment styles are not about who you date. They're about how your nervous system learned to survive connection. They were shaped long before romance entered the picture, long before texting, ghosting, or situationships existed. They were formed in moments when you needed closeness, safety, reassurance, or space, and learned sometimes quietly what was available and what wasn't. And today, those early lessons are still running the show behind the scenes, influencing who you feel drawn to, how you react to intimacy, and why certain relationship patterns keep repeating no matter how self-aware you become. Once you understand the four attachment styles, not as flaws but as strategies, you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking a far more empowering question: what did I learn about love and how can I update it? Let's start with secure attachment, because this is the baseline everyone compares themselves to, often unfairly. Securely attached people didn't grow up in perfect homes or live emotionally flawless lives. What they had was consistency. When they expressed needs, those needs were met often enough that their nervous system learned a simple rule: connection is safe and distance isn't a threat. As adults, secure people feel comfortable with closeness, but don't panic when space appears. They don't overanalyze delayed replies or assume silence means rejection. They communicate directly, not because they're fearless, but because they trust repair. When conflict happens, they don't see it as the end of the relationship. They see it as a moment to understand, adjust, and reconnect. Secure attachment isn't about being emotionally perfect. It's about having an internal sense that love doesn't require constant vigilance. And that inner calm is exactly why secure people often feel magnetic without trying. They don't chase, they don't withdraw, and they don't test affection. They simply show up as they are, and that steadiness becomes the anchor in the relationship. Now let's talk about anxious attachment, which is often misunderstood as being too needy, when in reality it's rooted in emotional inconsistency. Anxiously attached people learned early that love was unpredictable. Sometimes closeness was available, sometimes it disappeared. As a result, their nervous system learned to stay alert, scanning for signs of withdrawal, changes in tone, or emotional shifts. In adult relationships, this shows up as overthinking, hyper-awareness, and a deep sensitivity to perceived distance. Anxious attachment isn't about wanting too much. It's about fearing the loss of connection. These individuals love deeply, invest fully, and feel emotions intensely. But when closeness feels threatened, their system goes into protest mode. They may seek reassurance, replay conversations in their head, or try to reestablish connection through texting, questioning, or emotional intensity. What's important to understand is that anxious attachment isn't manipulation, it's survival. It's the nervous system saying, "Please don't disappear on me again." When anxiously attached people feel safe and consistently chosen, their anxiety softens. They don't become less loving, they become more grounded. Then there's avoidant attachment, the most misunderstood and often most demonized style. Avoidant attachment isn't about being cold or incapable of love. It's about learning that closeness came with cost. For avoidantly attached individuals, early experiences taught them that relying on others led to disappointment, intrusion, or emotional overwhelm. So they adapted by becoming self-sufficient, not because they didn't want connection, but because it felt safer not to need it. As adults, avoidants often crave intimacy on a subconscious level, but feel threatened by it once it arrives. When relationships deepen, their nervous system interprets closeness as pressure. They may withdraw, go emotionally quiet, focus on independence, or create distance without fully understanding why. Avoidants often feel calm when alone and anxious when things get too emotionally intense. They don't pull away because they don't care. They pull away because their system is trying to restore safety. The tragedy of avoidant attachment is that many avoidants don't realize they're reacting to closeness, not to the person in front of them. They often leave relationships thinking something was off when what they were really feeling was intimacy itself. And then we have fearful avoidant attachment, sometimes called disorganized attachment, the most complex and emotionally exhausting of all four. Fearful avoidant individuals grew up with both longing and fear intertwined. They learned that connection was desired, but also unsafe. As adults, they experience a push-pull dynamic internally. They crave closeness deeply, but once it's offered, fear takes over. They may pursue connection intensely, then suddenly withdraw, becoming confused by their own behavior. One moment they want reassurance, the next they feel suffocated by it. This isn't indecisiveness. It's a nervous system caught between two survival strategies fighting for control. Fearful avoidant individuals often feel intense chemistry in relationships because emotional highs and lows feel familiar. Calm, stable connection can actually feel boring or suspicious at first. Healing for this style isn't about choosing closeness or distance. It's about learning regulation, safety, and emotional consistency over time. What's fascinating is how these attachment styles interact with each other in relationships. Secure partners tend to stabilize anxious ones, soften avoidant defenses, and create emotional safety through consistency. Anxious and avoidant pairings, however, often fall into a painful cycle. The anxious partner seeks closeness, which triggers the avoidant partner's need for space. The avoidant pulls away, which heightens the anxious partner's fear of abandonment. Both are reacting to threat, not malice, yet both feel misunderstood. Fearful avoidant individuals often oscillate between anxious and avoidant behaviors, creating intense but unstable connections that feel powerful but draining. Understanding these dynamics changes everything because it removes blame and replaces it with clarity. You stop seeing behavior as personal attacks and start seeing them as protective patterns. Here's the most important part. Attachment styles are not life sentences. They are learned patterns, and anything learned can be updated. Secure attachment isn't something you're born with. It's something you can build through awareness, boundaries, and emotionally safe relationships. Anxiously attached people heal by learning self-soothing and internal reassurance instead of chasing external validation. Avoidantly attached people heal by slowly allowing closeness without interpreting it as loss of autonomy. Fearful avoidant individuals heal by creating predictability and emotional safety within themselves before seeking it from others. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means becoming more regulated, more conscious, and more aligned with what you actually want rather than what your nervous system fears. When you understand attachment styles, relationships stop feeling random. You realize why you're drawn to certain people, why some connections feel addictive, and why others feel unfamiliar but peaceful. You stop romanticizing emotional chaos and start recognizing emotional safety as attraction. You learn that love isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. And perhaps most importantly, you learn that your attachment style is not a flaw. It's a story your nervous system has been telling to keep you safe. Once you understand that story, you can finally begin to rewrite it, not through force, but through awareness, compassion, and choice.